Welcome to Velocity, the Vista Chamber podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Beld, and it's my privilege to interview the movers, shakers, and change makers impacting the Vista community and beyond. Today, I am joined by a true VIP, John Conley, Vista City Manager. Mr. Conley has worked for the City of Vista for more than 25 years and was appointed City Manager in March of this year. Before his appointment, he served as the Director of Community Development and Engineering, and he's a true Vistan, having spent his entire career with the city. And he also resides in Vista with his wife and children. Welcome, John. Can I call you John?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks so much for being here. I know you have a super busy schedule, sometimes late night meetings. So appreciate the energy this morning. Okay. So the first thing I want to ask you is really what led you to a career in public service? How did that start? Let's go back in time.
Yeah, that's a good one. You know, I never really honestly planned on having a career in public service. I got a degree in planning, at San Diego State, and I love the region. I've always been a San Diego person. And so when I got out of college, I got a job in a consulting company doing land use stuff, planning. And a friend of mine that I worked with, it's kind of typical to, contacted me after a couple of years. They had a temporary job at the City of Vista, and they were leaving and wanted to know if I was interested. So my intent was just to come and work for a few months as sort of a transitional opportunity to go back into another planning job. And I got there, and the people were just amazing. I mean, the director I had at the time, Robin Putnam, was awesome, and the city manager then, Rita Geldert, who was there for a super long time, just amazing ladies that were just super inviting, and the people were great. And I just fell in love with Vista. So they offered me a full-time job after about a year that I was there as a part-timer, and I've never looked back. It's just always been a wonderful place to work, and the people and the city, it's just got a great vibe and a great feel to it. And so I never really looked at it from like public sector work. I just looked at it as this is my job, and I just really love the job.
Yeah, that's great. What is the best part of the work that you do?
I really enjoy the interaction with the community. As a planning person, a lot of the interaction with the community is like, oh, we're building this project here. And people are like, oh, I hate it. So there was a lot of that to kind of get used to. But there's also so many good things that you do and so many great projects that come in when you open a new restaurant or a new commercial center or new housing. You get people that come in afterwards and say, oh, it's such a great project and I really enjoy it. And this is what I want to see happen in the city. We need to look at the creeks, or we need to look at housing, or we need to look at our traffic situation, just trying to work with people to solve those problems or try to hear their concerns and make improvements. That's the part that I think is the most enjoyable, being able to look back and say, oh, I had a hand in some beneficial thing that happened in the city. And people are always, really good about coming and talking about the things that they enjoy and the things that they like and that they want to see expand. They're also really good at coming and talking about the things they don't like and that need to change. So you constantly have that input from the community on things that they like and don't like, and trying to balance that and make sure that you're doing stuff that you feel like is the right thing for the community. That's honestly the part that I enjoy the most.
That's great. For people who don't know, what does a city manager do? Tell us a little bit about
So it's
what that
kind
looks
of
like.
a multifaceted job. Your primary responsibility is to the council. So the mayor and the 4 district council members, they are elected. They are the policymakers for the city. So they bring you all their own issues individually and as a group. And you as a city manager are responsible for bringing those issues to the council to discuss and get policy direction and direction on where we need to go in the future as far as growth and handling city business, charging fees, all those things come before the council. So the city's budget and how we spend our money and how we help the public are the primary responsibilities of the city council. That all comes to me as a city manager, and then I direct the city staff. So there's about 320 or so permanent employees at the city, as well as part-time people that come in the summer. And so I oversee all of those divisions and those departments, and the council gives us policy direction, and then we implement it. So my job is to make sure that their issues are being heard and that their constituents are being handled, and that all of my staff has direction on what they need to do. That's the majority of the job. Then it's, going to public events and representing the city, trying to help out people that have problems with the system or some individual person that they can't get whatever they need accomplished done. So stepping in and doing a lot of problem solving on a one-on-one basis is part of the job, but the biggest part of it is just representing the council members' desires and making sure that the staff has adequate direction on what they need to get done.
How do you navigate when the council has differing opinions? I mean, obviously there's votes, right? Votes can tell you, even if they're 5-0, 4-1, 3-2, there's a majority that tells you, but some things, is everything voted on? Is it always super clear? Do you have to?
No, it's not super clear. So that's a great question. The council, generally we follow the majority rule, right? So there's 5 people on the council, a 3-2 is pretty easy to figure out. So when there's any kind of controversial issue, we always try to get them to vote so that we can have a clear direction and majority that rules. There are council members that have individual issues too that they want to bring forward. Maybe it's somebody in their district that's having a problem. Maybe it's, a friend of theirs that they know that's asked for some help with something. And so we also handle those on a one-on-one basis. So if something comes up that we know is within our means to handle, and it's not something that's really a big policy issue that needs to come to city council for a vote, we try to handle those too. So call code enforcement or call the traffic engineer or call the planner and see if you can't get them to help out that person. So there's a little bit of that hand-holding and a little bit of that help that goes on. But honestly, the majority of it is through council meetings. So, twice a month we have a council meeting. We have a workshop once a month as well. And we've had a whole bunch of issues. And so the public really should just be informed of, hey, look at the agenda that's coming up and see if there's anything of interest to me. People can zoom into the meetings now. They don't even have to be there and comment or participate. And so really it's just about making sure that you're getting their direction as a whole and that you're getting a majority vote on things and you're giving direction. But there will be disagreements. There's political perspectives that are very different in every council, and every 2 years when you have an election, you usually have some new council member comes in. It never stays static. So you just have to try to bring issues that they can look at collectively and they all really want to do what's best for Vista. They just sometimes see that differently. Mm-hmm. And so trying to walk that fine line and figure out, what's the best direction, what things I should bring to the council versus what things I should try to handle on my own or with them individually. That's always just trying to figure out what's a really big problem and what's kind of a smaller problem that you can solve on your own. But that's sort of the finesse of this job. And you just kind of got to figure that out as you go. And I mean, I've only been doing this for a few months, but in planning, we had similar situations. So, trying to figure out where, the potholes are and where you don't want to step, that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Well, Vista's had a lot of consistency with leadership. I've been in the community for 20 years, and you're the third city manager in that time. Rita Gelder, who you mentioned earlier, was city manager when I moved to Vista. And then Patrick Johnson was a longtime city manager. I think before Rita was Morris Vance, who was then the mayor, and he was city manager for a very long time. Right. So we've had this history and consistency with the changing council members. We've had that consistent leadership at the city manager level. So I think that's benefited Vista over time. Do you see that as a benefit? Do you think it's like budgetary and things like that? Do you see that being a benefit, having a long time city managers?
You got to have people that have the history, and the most effective people at the city are always those that have been there for a long time. They know how the system works. They know who the contacts are in the community. They know who to talk to when they have a problem or a need. And that's really hard for someone new coming into the organization to figure out. It takes years to establish the relationships like we have and like the business owners have with the chamber. It's the same kind of thing. So longevity really helps in a city government situation because you have that history. You know who the people are that you need to talk to, the people who you need to get input from and get direction from. You know, some of the community players, business owners and property owners. That stuff all has a huge hand in how the city does business. And when you don't have those connections and you're trying to reach out to people and you don't have those relationships, it makes it so much harder to establish trust and to know that the people that you're trying to help are interested in helping you. And so the longevity has been part of this success story for Vista. I mean, some of the things that we've done in the downtown and the Paseo Santa Fe and the business park and the development that we've seen here over the last 20 years is a huge result of the people who've had consistent leadership at the city.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I had former Mayor Judy Ritter on. She was actually the very first guest on the podcast when we launched it a couple of years ago. And we talked a lot about how, councils change. It takes, decades to bring a big project like Paseo Santa Fe, for example, to fruition. And so having consistency, some on the council, but also having that on staff is really important. So, I'm glad that the city council chose someone who has such, long understanding of the community, and that you were willing to step into the role and take the leadership. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's been great.
So, what do you think is the hardest part of your job?
Oh, there's a few hard parts. Mm-hmm. There is a little bit of divisiveness within the political ranks at the city council. They don't all see things the same. They come from different political parties. So trying to satisfy one council member's concern might be a problem for another council member. So honestly, the hardest part for me has been just trying to move through that, that decision-making process when certain members of council want something and certain members of council want something else, and trying to bring them to the middle where, everybody agrees on something or we know we have the right path forward. That can be kind of fraught with danger and difficulties. And so to me, just, trying to work through that and keep everybody moving in a positive direction can be very challenging. The staff side of it, the people that work for me, that's the best part. I mean, they're all really amazing and they're super supportive and they work really hard. We have a great staff in Vista. So that's the part that I think is like the easy part. I can just give people things to do and they handle it. The city council, because it changes and because they have such different political views, is just trying to make sure that I'm keeping everybody happy and moving in a good, positive direction. That's got its challenges,
mm-hmm.
Because they don't always see things the same. So for me, that's the hardest part. And the fact that it changes every 2 years. So you have, potentially new personalities that come in that you have to try to establish relationships with and gain trust. In order to get things done, you have to have that. So, just making sure that you're satisfying their concerns, I think, is the biggest challenge to this job.
Well, I think that you're really well suited to do that. Just knowing you personally, worked on city staff and I've known you since I've been in the chamber in this role. I think you're a really good listener. And I think that's something that's super important in any job, but especially in the role that you're in, is really listening and not just hearing what people say, but understanding the context behind what they're saying too. So I think thumbs up there. You're welcome.
That comes from all the planning experience, I think, more than anything.
Yeah. And that's actually leads me to my very next question is, you have such an extensive planning background. How do you fill in kind of those gaps where maybe public safety or some of the other things where you didn't have necessarily that direct experience? How do you fill those buckets?
Yeah. So, I'm learning that now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of new responsibilities that come with this job that I never dealt with in the past. The engineering and planning sides, those are easy because I did that for 25 years. But, the fire department, the sheriff's contract, human resources, finance, code enforcement, all these other areas that come into play now. So I've just been meeting with those directors one-on-one and in group settings and trying to understand, what are the issues that you're dealing with? What are the problems? Where do we need to, make some changes? Or what are the tools that you need to best do your job? But really, just like I said, it's those relationships. It's just trying to make sure that those folks feel supported and that they have what they need and that they're giving me all the basic information. I meet with all the directors once or twice a month, depending on the department, and we go through all of the issues at hand and where they're at with different things. And that, that process is just going to take a while, but that's my education process. I get to ask them all the important questions and the things that I need to kind of understand how that, their departments work or what makes them tick. And it's their insight and information that really is giving me the upper hand in that, with regard to that. I have to rely on their expertise and their understanding to make those things work. And so I'm just trying to develop those relationships more and more.
Well, and they're already there. I mean, you had been on staff so long.
For sure.
And there's so much collaboration between the departments with regard to, like, you're going to bring a project in planning, there's going to be a discussion with the fire department. There's going to be a discussion with code enforcement to make sure everything, so it's not like you've never talked to somebody in another department.
But
lucky. It's deeper, goes deeper.
I'm lucky that I have those relationships. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like when I was talking to those people before, it was more about, did you see my project, or did you, write the conditions or whatever? It wasn't like, hey, what do you do? How does your department work? Mm-hmm. And what are the critical issues that you're facing? And, those are the things that I never really knew or asked because I wasn't responsible for them.
Right.
But now it's a whole new game. So just getting into those deeper conversations with them to understand like what they do and what their critical needs are. That's what I've been spending the last couple of months doing. And I'm sure that's what I'll be spending the next couple of years doing, trying to just really understand all those pieces.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. So I want to shift our conversation a little bit to talking about the community as a whole. Vista 60th birthday this year for the city. Yeah. So, and our city's really grown since incorporation and even before. There's not a lot of space to do new things.
No.
So just from, like a planning perspective, but also what do you think are the city's biggest opportunities over maybe the next 5 to 10 years? Just for not necessarily even development, but just overall for our community.
Yeah. That's a good one. So we have a critical need for housing, and I think most people understand that. That's a statewide and region-wide issue. We're looking for opportunities for housing, and unfortunately, we don't have much land left, as you pointed out. So kind of the single family, half-acre lots that Vista's kind of been known for, there's just no more of those opportunities. There are very few. So the majority development that we're seeing now is multifamily. And so there's a little bit of a challenge there because a lot of folks that live here don't want to see more multifamily, but we need the housing and there's no space left. So that's like this conundrum of how do you solve that? We're really looking around the transit centers and, where the transit opportunities are to build new housing. So around the downtown, around Vista Village, around Civic Center. And that's kind of where we're focusing our efforts. Vista also has some older commercial areas that are really kind of underutilized or run down. And so we're looking at those as opportunities in the future for new development, whether it's housing or commercial or whatever, the market's looking for. One thing I think people don't really fully understand is the city doesn't determine what goes where. Mm-hmm. So people always come to me and say, how come you don't put a Taco Bell there? How come
Trader Joe's?
How come there's not a Trader Joe's in Vista,
Yeah.
But we only zone it. So we create the opportunity for uses, but the markets who bring them to us. So trying to make it as attractive to the market as we can. So trying to make sure a Trader Joe's knows that, hey, you're very welcome here, or a new car dealership or something that generates some revenue or some benefit to the city, new restaurants. We have an incentive program. Anything like that we try to create opportunities for people, but we can't hand select where stuff goes. And so trying to maybe set the stage and really create those opportunities for businesses that we want to come to Vista is sort of the key. And that's really what I think their biggest opportunity is creating the ability to bring in new uses that are going to serve the community that everybody really wants to see. And I think this, these multinational companies that establish new locations, they have a formula that they use, and they're looking at like median income and disposable income and, size of family and all those things. Well, Vista doesn't have all those numbers really like some other communities do. And so it's not easy for us to attract things like Trader Joe's or high-end restaurants where, they're relying on a high disposable income. And so still trying to attract those types of users with what we have is a challenge. And I think that's where we're trying to focus our efforts to try to bring some users into the city that people really want to see that may not be totally ready to jump into this market, but because the city was inviting or because we contacted them and said, hey, we have this great opportunity here, come check it out, whether it's in the business park or it's in downtown or it's in East Vista Way, wherever. It's inviting those folks to come and see what we have here and giving them more information than just their basic, 1 mile radius kind of look. And so I'm really trying to bring those opportunities to the city so that we can bring some of the services here that people really want to see.
At J&R Auto Body and Paint, you don't have to worry about a thing. From minor dents and dings to major collision repair, we offer a worry, hassle-free experience with superior customer service. Our auto claim advisors work directly with your insurance company, so you don't have to deal with the headaches. Our certified technicians work on all makes and models to get your repair done right the first time. We stand behind our work with a lifetime warranty. Locally and family owned, J&R Auto Body is here to serve the community. Call us today at 760-724-4923.
Hi, it's Carrie from Solatube Home in Vista, California. If you're looking for ways to brighten and cool your home, we are your natural light and fresh air experts. We offer a selection of daylighting and ventilation products to help make your home beautiful and comfortable. And the best part of all is you won't be using any electricity to brighten up. We can bring beautiful, natural light into those dark spaces in your home, transforming them into beautifully lit spaces in less than 2 hours. No mess, no fuss, just amazing natural light to make your home look and feel great. If you're looking to cool off your home, we have a complete line of ventilation products to keep your home and garage cool. We want to make cooling and refreshing your home easier and more energy efficient than ever with our line of whole house fans, solar attic fans, and garage fans. Our certified installers carry the full line of Solatube daylighting and ventilation products on their vans at all times. Installation can usually be done in about 2 hours. No messy drywall, paint repair, structural changes, or re-roofing needed. It's pretty much the easiest home improvement project you'll ever take on. At Solatube Home, we offer no obligation appointments throughout Southern California. Visit our website at solatubehome.com or stop by our showroom conveniently located in Vista at 2210 Oak Ridge Drive, or give us a call, 619-375-1629. We look forward to brightening your day.
For more than 60 years, Tri-City Medical Center has been committed to advancing the health and wellness of the community we serve. With leading-edge emergency care, including top-rated heart and stroke programs, advanced orthopedics, primary care, obstetrics, and neonatal care, Tri-City stands at the ready when you need us most. Learn more at tricitymed.org.
You know, one of the things that's come up a couple of times in other episodes is just kind of the relationship between landlords and tenants, and how in Vista we have a real mix of ownership. It's particularly like in the downtown, we have on the historic side, we have a lot of smaller owners who maybe have a different interest or different vested interest in what goes into their property, and they're willing to work with the right tenant, or they're willing to wait for the right thing. Compared to maybe some folks who own a property and live in another country. Yeah. They don't care. They just want a rent check. They want the biggest rent check they can get. And so it's really interesting to hear the city's perspective on navigating the different types of ownership, their needs, how it fits with zoning, what's allowed, and trying to work with the different organizations and businesses and to bring the right mix of stuff in. So it's really interesting. We've had a couple of different people on the show who've talked about that perspective. I wanted to mention, go back to the housing piece that you mentioned a minute ago, just from the chamber's perspective, and something that when I talk to business owners again and again, especially our larger employers, again and again, we hear that they need talent. They're looking for people to work for them. And if you can't find a place to live that either you can afford, or even if there's no inventory, if you can't find a place to live, you can't work in a particular community. You know, people are being pushed further and further out and commuting further and further. And that's a real problem for our businesses, whether they have 1 or 1,000 employees. And so it's important to think about the role of housing and how it impacts the business community as well. It's not just, this family needs somewhere to live. Well, that family needs somewhere to live so that the parents can go to their jobs, so the kids can go to school, and they need, there's a full circle approach to housing. It's not just we need to put people in under roofs. There's more to it to that.
Yeah. This brings up affordable housing. So I think there's this real need to educate people on what affordable housing is. Vista has a significant need for affordable housing, just like every community in this region. The market rate, housing costs are incredible. Rents are up, property, values are up. So the city really needs to bring affordable housing and build affordable housing and subsidize affordable housing. I think most people's idea of affordable housing is like, oh, it's Section 8, or oh, it's those homeless people, or oh, it's the poor folks. Well, that's not really what affordable housing is. Affordable housing is simply getting a break on your rent or your purchase price based on what you make. So all these folks that are going into affordable housing, they have real jobs. They have full-time income. They usually have a family and a spouse, and they make good money, but they just can't afford to rent something at $3,000 a month or pay a mortgage that's $5,000 a month. So they need some help. Affordable housing is simply, hey, tell us how much you make. If you qualify, if you're below the median, which in San Diego County for a family of 4, the median's like over $100,000. It's like $106,000, which that's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So these people still have really good jobs. They're making good money, but they maybe can't afford the market rate housing. So if they qualify, if they're under that median, then they're eligible for affordable housing. And what that basically means is we calculate what's 30% of what you make, and that's what you pay for rent or mortgage. And so they get some help because it doesn't exceed a third of their income. And that's the formula behind it. It's pretty simple, but most folks don't understand that's what it is. And they think that if you're building affordable housing near them, that you're going to have all these problems,
Mm-hmm.
But you can look downtown at some of the affordable projects that we built, and you can see we don't really have those problems. These are all hardworking people that are trying to, make ends meet. And there's still a huge need. I mean, every time we build an affordable housing project, we have a list of 600, 700, 1,000 people, waiting to get 15 or 20 or 30 units. And it never ends. We'll never have enough. So that's a huge need for the region and in the city as a whole, is just to provide those opportunities. So we're still looking around the transit center, along the Santa Fe corridor and elsewhere in the, around the transit areas to try to provide those affordable housing opportunities. And that's a huge need that we're never going to meet, but we're going to continue to try to provide it for that exact reason. We don't want people buying homes in Menifee or Temecula and driving, an hour to work every day. We want to have people that live here and can afford to live here. That's the only way we're going to get there, because the market's not just going to go, okay, we're going to drop 30% and, the cost of housing. I mean, maybe we have another recession where the market goes down, but it just goes back up over time. So you have to provide those affordable opportunities for people to live here and to support the businesses. And that's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah. When you think about a family of 4 with an income of like $110,000, I mean, I can think of so many examples of professional level careers where 2 people in those fields, like a 2-income family, they're below that threshold. I mean, we're talking about some of our teachers.
A lot.
Right? Probably a good chunk of people who work at Vista City Hall.
A lot.
Right? So, educated professional folks with careers needing a place to live.
Well, and what you're seeing now too is those entities. So the school district and the city, what the kind of past practice has been is you build affordable housing and you put a list out there, and whoever qualifies, first come, first serve kind of thing. Now what you're seeing is these entities are saying, hey, our own people can't afford to live here, so we're going to build some affordable housing for our people. So the school district's talking about it for their teachers. The city's talking about it for their workers, their public works, fire, safety people. I mean, those are the kinds of things you're going to start seeing in the future, as projects are going to be built for your workforce so that you can house the people that work for you. Even the big corporations in the business park are talking about it.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see more of that as time comes.
Interesting. So the general plan update is coming up. So
Yes.
Tell me quickly, what's a general plan and why do we need to update it?
So the general plan is a blueprint for your community. So it's your future land use plan. It lays out, planned land use for every parcel in the city. So you can go into the city and say, what's the general plan for my property? And it's commercial or residential or whatever. But the city identifies what the future use is, whether it's developed or not. And it could be different for what it's developed for, because we have a plan and we're going to get there. So in doing that, you identify, how you're going to grow, what your transportation system needs to be, what your sewers need to be, what's your water, what's your emergency services. So all of the services that we provide are looked at in the general plan. We identify a growth plan for the future, and then we identify all the things that we need to do to get to that level of growth. So if we need to expand sewers or widen roads or whatever, that's all defined in the general plan. That should be updated every 10 years or so. The last time we did it was 2012. So we started last year to update it again because we want to stay current. We want to look at what the trends are. We want to make sure that we're planning for growth accordingly and that we're, meeting the needs of the current residents versus what they were maybe 10 or 15 years ago when we did it last time.
How does technology like transportation technology loop into that?
It's a huge issue. In the past, most of the planning was done around transit centers, and we're still kind of in that boat, and it's fixed rail transit, which in Vista, the Sprinter doesn't serve a lot of business communities. It doesn't go to the business park. So there's a real gap there. And so we're hoping that technology can resolve that, whether it's driverless vehicles. I forget what the name of the technology is for that. But, there's all these new things where you can maybe get around a little easier without owning a car. Having, Uber and Lyft are good examples of that. That's fairly new technology. So we're looking at a lot of ways to get people from fixed transit stops to their work or to their home, or giving them opportunities to get from their home to do shopping or other chores without having to take a single, occupant vehicle and get back. So the technology that's out there and that's being developed will give people a lot more freedom to move around within the next 10 years. And so that's what we're trying to accommodate in our general plan. I mean, we're still looking at everybody's getting in their car and driving to work, and that's kind of how the planning is done, or the assumption is there. But now we're starting to see some changes in those assumptions to say, well, some of the population is going to take mass transit, or they're going to take a bike, or they're going to walk, or they're going to take an Uber. And so the way that you look at how you plan the transportation system is broken up now, and you have less people in a single vehicle. And we're hoping that as technology advances, that we get people out of that situation. Sandag's doing that too. Mm-hmm. And so accounting for, that's the Regional Transportation Agency, accounting for that in your planning is going to change the way we look at how we develop our communities, but still trying to keep everything dense development in confined locations and not spread it out into the backcountry. That's really the idea. We want to keep people, jobs, services in sort of a central location. And that's why you're seeing all the dense development in kind of the downtown area where all the services are. People can walk to get groceries. They can walk to have dinner. They can walk to have a drink. They can walk to go see a movie. That's the idea. And I think a lot of folks that live around the historic downtown area are frustrated with the amount of development, but that is the future of the city. That's where it's going to go, because we want people to be close to those services.
The city's fiscal year starts July 1st, which means a new budget cycle, a new CIP cycle, capital improvement.
Just approved it last night.
Yes. So can you tell me a little bit about the difference between operating budget and CIP budget?
Sure.
And just what that looks like.
You bet. So the operating budget is just paying for all the city staff and the costs of salaries and staffing.
Programs,
mm-hmm. Things that are not tied to like public improvements, curbs, gutters, streets, facilities. So the operating budget is basically, paying for all the staff time and the programs that we implement. We've had some ups and downs in that because, the city's revenue is dependent upon sales tax and property tax and fees. Those are kind of the primary things. And those things are all jumping up and down. I mean, property tax stays pretty steady and it's increasing, but sales tax is all over the map. And the amount of fees that we get is dependent on how much people want to do in terms of developing things. And so those revenues change. We have a little bit of a new revenue source with cannabis. We've been making pretty good sales tax off that. So that's a good boost for our budget, as well as online sales. There's been a recent decision at the federal level about how sales tax is allocated for online sales. And so we're getting a little bit more, and that's helping our budget. We just adopted an operating budget, or just had a workshop on it. We're going to adopt it at the end of this month, but our operating budget is in good shape. The bottom line is, based on what our projections are in sales and property tax over the next year, we're still collecting more revenue than we're spending by just a little.
Well, that's a good thing.
Just a little bit. Okay. So you want to keep a kind of a thin margin there. You budget conservatively because you don't want to overestimate. And usually we have a little bit of a reserve at the end of the year, and the council gets to decide what they want to do with it. And so that's the process. You look at what are your costs, how much money do you expect to bring in, and you want to make sure those are balanced, and that's the operating budget process. And then at the end of the year, the council decides what they want to do with anything left over. Sometimes it goes into a reserve. We save it for the future, piggy bank kind of concept. And sometimes they just identify projects that they want to implement, and so we use that money for that. The capital improvement budget is projects. So you want to build a new street, you want to put in some pedestrian enhancements, a bike lane, a new facility, a civic center, a moonlight, whatever
a roundabout.
A roundabout. That comes out of the capital improvement program. So on an annual basis, we look at, and we probably have, 50 or 60 projects in the capital improvement program that are ongoing at any time. Facilities, streets, sewers, you name it. So every year we look at those and we decide, these are the things we're putting funding toward. It's usually a 6-year plan, and we plan for 2 years for funding. So we identify all the projects, we put whatever funding we have into them to start the process. And then as we move along, we put more money in once we know how much it's going to cost to build, and then we build it, and then we close it out and identify new projects. So that's an iterative process. We just adopted the mid-year, it's a 2-year budget, so we did a kind of a mid-year look. We add a few things, we reduce a few things, but that's all set in stone. Folks that are interested in their own neighborhoods and communities can come and they can look online through the city's website and find the capital improvement program budget. They can come in and talk to engineering and find out what's going on around their neighborhood. But there's a lot of new construction activity all around the city that moves all over depending on where the CIP is. And so that's always of interest to people because they want to see where projects are happening.
That's great. There's a lot of resources on the city website, and I want to take a second to just shout out all of the planning projects that are submitted. There's a link to all of those and where they are in the process. There's so many resources on the city website, so I'll make sure to put a link in the show notes for folks who are interested in learning about where are these multifamily things going and where are the roads getting improved and.
GIS. The GIS link has maps with all kinds of great information that you can see sort of what's around you, and that's a good option.
Yeah, that's great. People ask me all the time, do you know about such and such? And I just send them the link. Check this link out.
100%.
This is so helpful. Just look at that.
It's not all inclusive,
No, but it's great.
But it's a really good reference. And then the planning department contacts are in there. So if you want to contact somebody in planning and say, it's not on the list, but what's happening here, they'll answer your question.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about Vista that we haven't talked about?
I love this city. It's a great place to work and live. The people are awesome. And, it's the reason that we are here is it's a great place. And, it really is a small community still. I mean, it's a city of 100,000 people, which is pretty good size, but you still see folks, and you run into them at the grocery store or at the ball field or walking your dog or whatever. And there's just a real camaraderie here. The folks that have been here for a long time, they know everybody. They're friendly to people. They'll stop and talk to you. You just don't see that in a lot of communities in Southern California in general. So I really appreciate that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree completely. I feel like I'm always bumping into people and overall people are kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good place to be.
For sure.
Okay, so I always close every interview with a few rapid fire questions. Okay. So I'm going to hit you with these now. So the first is a book that you think people should read or a book that you've read recently that stuck with you.
Recent book I read that was good was David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. This guy is an ex-Navy SEAL who's a super tough guy who had a really hard life growing up and kind of learned to be resilient, and just his message is kind of, hey, life's hard. You got to suck it up and you got to get things done. You got to roll out of bed early in the morning and get your stuff done and not complain about it. And I love that idea. Like you gotta, it's not easy. Things don't come to you on, a silver spoon. You don't get handouts. You don't get pats on the back and help all the time. You really have to work hard and grind to get it. I think that the younger generation sometimes really needs to hear that lesson. I know I'm always telling my kids that they're tired of it, but it's a good book. Kind of give you that perspective on life's hard and you got to grind to make it work.
It's good. All right. I'll add it to my list.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, John, what's your jam? Tell me a song. You have to turn it up.
God, I'm not the most musical guy. My wife would be like, what? She loves all of it. I like the classics. I like classic rock, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, Doobie Brothers, Doors, that kind of thing. That's my jam.
All right, good. Okay. Tell me something that inspires you.
My family inspires me a lot. I have a big family. I have 5 kids. I have an extended family that's huge on my mom's side, lots of cousins and aunts and uncles. There's a lot of success stories in there. And, some folks that really have gone a long way just with their hard work and dedication. My dad's passed away, but he was a very hard worker and really dedicated to his job. Had a lot of success because he was a hard worker. That's an inspiration to me. It's, folks that don't take things for granted, that aren't entitled, they appreciate what they have and they work hard to get it. That's inspiring to me because that's what I think everybody needs to really do to be successful. And, if you can do that in a meaningful way, your chances of having success in life are pretty good.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
And with Father's Day just around the corner, it's nice to hear that your dad was such an inspiration to you.
He's awesome.
And now you're a dad to 5.
Yes.
So, and I'm sure you're an
inspirational I am to them.
Well, maybe not right now when they're teenagers.
You got it. It's when it comes back.
They'll figure it out soon.
I'm still waiting for that.
Yeah, they'll figure it out. Okay, so this is a tough one, but a Vista business that you think deserves a shout out.
Yes. So I do a lot of nonprofit type events and, community events. And the couple businesses that I always see at them are Handel's Ice Cream and Chick-fil-A, the new one over here on Sun Road. The owners of those businesses are super outgoing folks. They're always there to help the community out. If people want a free thing or they want a handout or they want something they can give to the public, those are the first 2 businesses that are always jumping out there to do stuff. And I just really appreciate that those business owners see the value in helping the community out and doing some things, gratis, because it all comes back in business, I'm sure. But they're very giving and, charitable folks that run those businesses. And so I think they deserve the shout out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to our guest, John Conley, Vista City Manager, and thank you for listening to Velocity. If you like what you heard, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and tell a friend. Help us move Vista forward with Velocity. The Vista Chamber of Commerce is a nonprofit organization that serves as a catalyst for business growth. Visit us online at vistachamber.org. Well, that's a wrap on season 2 of Velocity, the Vista Chamber podcast. I want to thank you so much for joining me as we've interviewed the movers, shakers, and change makers impacting Vista. We've heard some incredible stories. We've been inspired, maybe even a little teary-eyed at times. Looking forward to season 3, and we'll be back in September with brand new episodes. See you then.